I didn't get all the questions of News 24. News 24. Network and News 24 is two different things. Oh, I thought network is News 24. So network, I didn't get all your questions. I only got you when you talk about the Ruyter.
Okay. You also you said that the Minister of Home Affairs can presentation regarding citizenship. What did that entail?
Okay, the minister briefed us on issues of citizenship, immigration, and refugees issues, and then there is a white paper process that is being canvassed broadly, and we just got a briefing on snippets of that in terms of what it entails, and it must go to cabinet, and cabinet must endorse that, and then as well as public will reflect on it. So we then agreed largely with the spirit of that white paper process, and to that extent we urge the minister to move with speed for the implementation of that white paper process, but most importantly to work very hard in the context of the law to expedite processes that will arrest the continued influx of illegal immigrants in our country. Now, there is a definition of immigration and refugees. And refugees are people that come to your country for various reasons, including political asylum and so on. But that is totally different from people who come to your country illegally in numbers like we have seen. And as a result of porous borders, and that to come to South Africa is easy, more than any other country in the world. So that is why we applaud the work of the border management, but that on its own is not enough. So we need to deal with this question of immigration in protection of the citizens, including issues of employment and the kind of work opportunities that will be preserved for South Africans in our country. On the Ruyter, like I briefed, we will give an update on that matter. The Ruyter has been traced to be in Germany, in the city of Hamburg. The court in Pretoria have ruled in our favor that we must serve him the papers, which we have done, for a person like him who is a South African but not residing in the country. So there's a tedious process in relation to this, because it has got to go through the South African embassy, which must then serve the papers to him. And to this point, that process has started, and we just need to get the details of it in terms of the advice we will get from our lawyers. But that has been done. With regard to the judgment, Ntebu, on the deployment, we believe that Judge Vepenar have erred in law, and that is why we're taking up the matter. Politically, is this an overreach? Well, I will reserve that pronouncement up until the process of the law has been exhausted. But I can tell you that we defend our policy on cadre deployment. Cadre deployment policy of the ANC is what political parties that come into power world over exercise to deploy strategically people who execute the mandate of implementing the manifesto of the political party that has won an election. The DA does so in Cape Town. They dismissed Ubabum Kokri in Cape Town, well qualified. They dismissed him and replaced him with their cadre in the city of Cape Town. We all know who's that cadre. that they deployed. They redeployed him from Cape Town, from National Assembly to the city of Cape Town. And that is what they've actually done. They don't call it the cadre deployment. They call it something else. But they do deploy people in the areas where they are in charge. So the ANC defend the cadre deployment policy as it stands, because all governing parties world over, they exercise their right in terms of strategic positions, who they actually deploy to execute. And some of the malfeasance in government have got nothing to do with cadre deployment. Have got everything to do with the fact that we've got incompetence and corrupt officials who gang up, and laziness where people do not implement progressive policies within government. So you can be deployed by the ANC in a strategic position, whatever that it is, but you are not responsible for the entire civil service. Civil service is not a political tool. It is aligned to any political party that comes into power. So when you make a general statement that cadre deployment has basically brought government into a standstill, is an over-exaggeration and distortion, fundamentally. And we can debate that with the DA anyway, politically, because they know that it is a distortion. The fact that when you change administration in Cape Town, you will still have the same people who would have been there in the past 10 years in the system, and only get out of the system when they reach their date of 65 years or less in terms of the pension payout and retirement. That has got nothing to do with cadre deployment. Chief directors and everybody else in government are not deployed there by the party. Starting with people who, directors and DDGs. Those people are employed in government. And that is what we must exploit, driving a particular agenda and all of that. But at the end of the day, below that person, it is civil servants who belong either to the DA in terms of their political affiliation, ANC, or any other political party for that matter. That will apply in successive elections to come in the country. So this distortion, that cadre policy, in itself, it's what is killing development, social transformation in the country. It's exaggeration and distortion. And that is why we believe that the honorable judge has erred, and we have now petitioned the Supreme Court in relation to this matter. The question of respecting the outcome of the court is consistent with our respect of the rule of law and the independence of the judiciary. Whether the judgment is against us or for us, it is permissible within the law that it can be challenged. But it doesn't mean we must denigrate the judiciary by attacking judges. We must challenge them in law about the inadequacy or of their judgments and so on. We must challenge them, and this is what we are following as the ANC. With regard to Ace Magashule, is it done and dusted? Well, the ball is in his court. He was charged on 2 accounts, of which he was found guilty. And he was given an opportunity to appear before the DC. He did not appear before the DC. He was given 7 days after the decision was taken. He did not take up that opportunity to respond within 7 days to expulsion. So we don't know what he's planning, to form a party or to leave or to still appeal to the National Executive Committee or anything of that sort. We don't know. All what we know and what we have read and what we have seen is that he said the revolution continues and that he will respond at an appropriate time. So we don't know what is that response. And all what we have seen is the mobilization on the ground, which has failed successive attempts to mobilize on the ground, banning of ANC property and T-shirts in his name, which he has not condemned. All what we have seen is him going to ANC former leaders and presenting himself as a person who's in a dilemma when the options for him were there in terms of the party processes. So you can only be a person who's facing a dilemma and a conundrum politically if ever you have exhausted all the processes and that these people did not give me a choice but to leave. So all what we have equally seen is the WhatsApp messages of mobilization in his name, that he's been mobilizing, hard at work, mobilizing in the areas of the Free State, in Metsimahulu and the Kwakwa areas, Maloti Apufung, mobilizing our structures and councillors to join his movement. Where that movement is going, we don't know. That's what we see and happening on the ground, and the pronouncements that other political parties are actually talking to him. We will respond adequately to ACE whenever he decides to speak about the ANC or anything. For now, we pause and we defend the integrity of our processes and the disciplinary processes of the ANC, which anyone can subject those disciplinary processes to review if they think they are treated unfairly. There is an appeal in the ANC. There is the National Executive Committee. If you think you are treated unfairly by the NDC, you appeal to the National Disciplinary Committee of Appeal. That Mkijima's committee, Ubaba Mkijima, the chair of the ANC Disciplinary Committee, we believe that it has erred in terms of the following, and I therefore petition the appeal, which is chaired by Johnny Tilange. If Johnny Tilange overturns you, you can come to us, the National Executive Committee, and plead that you have been treated unfairly and therefore you don't deserve to be expelled from the ANC. So all those processes are at his disposal. So that's why I'm saying the court, the ball is on his court. And all what we're seeing in the public discourse is this thing that plays itself out in the form of this attack on the ANC assets and property by people who call themselves Mahashule's supporters, who attack the ANC in the manner in which they do. We have now unleashed our structures, wherever they are, that they must rise and defend the ANC and not allow the ANC to be distorted in the name of an individual who was given an opportunity to defend himself and answer to the charges that were put before him by the organization. He has not. So our organization must rise. We must not wait for the moment where things will happen and get out of hand. We must never allow anybody to bring the ANC into a state of total disarray for pursuance of personal interest. That must never be allowed by the African National Congress. We know that there's been outright mobilization on this matter politically, to the point where in which we are called upon to frown upon organizational internal processes. Where will the ANC be if every DC process will be frowned upon by its leadership at the expense of an individual? This organization will die, and that is not what we're about to do. Comrade Ace, as a former Secretary General and a leader of the ANC, knows what is good and right to be done. And that's what is important. So we draw no joy on the expulsion of anyone because we know years of people have accumulated in the struggle and how difficult it is just to recruit one member. So we draw no joy and celebrate the expulsion of anyone. So Ace Magashule, the ball is in his court. The NWC have received the report and endorsed the processes as constitutionally proper. Will go to the National Executive Committee and report. If the NEC have got a view on the matter, when we report and give the report from the NWC, it will be the NEC's view on the matter. But we have followed all the processes that are required of us to undertake as an organization when the National Disciplinary Committee have decided on a member in terms of the outcome of this matter. With regard to BRICS, Ntebu, and President Putin coming to South Africa, do we think we should have abandoned the ICC? Look where we come from with this. In 2017, we had a resolution which we took that we must get out of the ICC. In the last conference, that resolution was rescinded. The National Executive Committee have implemented, not for purposes of President Putin, to say that how do we deal with the conundrum of members, head of state, who are faced with this challenge of warrant of arrest and so on, and having to come to our country for one reason or the other. How do we deal with that? Now, not South Africa, the United Kingdom have implemented the amendment on the Rome Statutes for their country to provide immunity for heads of state who might be faced with challenges of this nature to can come to the United Kingdom. We are doing the same here. Not working against our own resolution to rescind the decision to work out, but we are saying we must amend. We have given this mandate to our lawmakers to implement this so that we don't answer the question in future after President Putin to another president. What do we do? So before you come and attack us on it, you must remember it started elsewhere. Countries can do this to preserve their own sovereignty and autonomy on matters of this nature. Now we are pursuing peace. Putin cannot come to South Africa. We must go to him as a president. And therefore, because of this warrant, we've got BRICS coming to our country. There is a conundrum because we're signatories. How do we deal with that matter? Not even compared to al-Bashir, who came to this country, despite the fact that there was no BRICS or anything of that sort, but AU coming to our country, and he had to come. And then we had to suffer the consequences for that because we are signatories to the ICC. So that's why we take this route of amending the Rome Statutes going forward. But at the present moment, as an ANC, we've got no mandate from our conference to get out of ICC in Tebu. Our conference is very clear that rescinded the decision of 2017. And to this extent, our act on the matter of amending the Roman statutes, even when we succeed in relation to that, which we will succeed, the period of the BRICS summit will have long passed. But that will remain in the history records for guiding future administration about how to deal with matters of this nature, because it's not about to end with President Putin. So that's what we said we must do. Samkelo, the last question, bilateral with President Putin. Unfortunately, between presidents, we don't get briefed about that. If there was, I don't know how you got that when you were stuck in Poland, but your intelligence worked faster than SSA, I think, to even know that the president had a bilateral with President Putin. But it will happen really in the context of a number of things that are coming between Russia and Africa. Among others, the Russia-Africa summit that is coming. And who knows, maybe also the issues around the BRIC summit. I think we leave it at that note. It belongs to the president handbag. As a head of state, he deserves to be treated with respect in relation to that. It doesn't have to brief us on that matter unless we are micromanaging him as a president. He briefed us about this mission, an African head of states, in detail. He was well received. They were well received, both in Kiev and as well as in St. Petersburg. And he expressed his regret about what happened with the plane. What is interesting about that stuck up in Poland is that the president had a courtesy call to the president of Poland, and then thereafter he left, knowing very well that everything will fall into place. So I think that is a matter that became unfortunate. So the question of whether when they got into the meeting they got cakes, they got coffee, who interrupted who, that's not important. The important issue for the mission was, did we achieve the objective? They did. The 10-point plan was placed before those two men, respectively. And then they will now come back and reflect on it and then determine as to what needs to happen going forward. And we salute this mission and the determination of our heads of state and Africa working together on this mission. Not one country, but Africa as a whole, working together, irrespective of the point that others pro-Ukraine and anti-Russia and so on, they understood that this mission is very important. And so that's why we emphasize as the ANC that this notion that we are pro-Russia, we are anti-Ukraine, it's a distortion of our non-aligned position. And that's why we are going to have a dialogue so that we continue to engage. Yesterday, I met with a friend of mine whom I served with for the longest of years in the Socialist International. They came here in Cape Town, and they came also to see us here. The Executive General Secretary of the Socialist Party in Europe, which we are in government in Germany, among others, which Germany in terms of the Russia-Ukraine is very important. And he briefed us and we briefed them about the stance of the ANC. And Stefan, who's the president of PES, also was in Cape Town, and will be pursuing these engagements. So we're talking to everybody because everyone tends to be confused. You are now giving arms to Russia. What's happening and all of that? We say we can't give arms to Russia. Russia has got to give arms to us. I mean, what will we give them? Roy Falk. Many nations have engaged in this front, but we have been singled out because we are regarded as a small end. And then it is said that we are compromising our own economic prospects. Now, compromising economic prospects means that you must bend over even your principles and your beliefs, because somebody who's not matured in terms of relations and trade want to bully you to take a particular stance. We believe we've got the voice, we've got the role to play in terms of this conflict. And it doesn't mean that we are pro something. We are anti-war at the end of the day. in terms of this particular conflict, and it must be understood as such in terms of how South Africa has conducted itself and the position it has taken on this matter. Have we centralized communication? No, it's not. As I conclude on this matter, it is better to be organized, to allow government to lead, because it is government that will determine whether President Putin can come or not come. Our mandate as the party, and which is our position, is that the BRICS must succeed, and government must then see to it how it actually succeeds. It's our turn. Obviously, in implementing that decision, they've got this part, which they themselves, based on empirical evidence before them, they will then make a determination about what needs to happen. So we leave it to government, and the president and the minister and cabinet are leading in that regard. And we've got full confidence that at some point they will take the nation into confidence on the matter, how they are handling it. But nonetheless, we're looking forward to BRICS. We ourselves are convening the BRICS political dialogue. You are all invited. We've got all political parties within BRICS and the African continent will be participating in this dialogue, and I've outlined what are the issues that we'll be grappling with in terms of strengthening party-to-party relations within BRICS and beyond. Thank you.